Hey folks, it's Jake here at Canadian Cutting Edge. Today we're taking a look at the TS38-D2 version of this TwoSun knife. This knife comes in 3 different options. This is the middle priced one. The less expensive one is a G10 liner lock, but it's got a really cool G10. If I could find the G10 version, I'd probably buy it. The only downside with the G10 one is, since it's a night morning design, in some other TwoSun knives, the early ones have this odd pocket clip, on some of the early G10 knives. The current stuff coming out, the new stuff is just great stuff, pocket clips and everything. But I like the look of the G10 on that TS38. The more expensive version of this has a titanium handle that's sort of a black washed kind of treatment instead of this titanium handle. And it has M390 steel instead of the D2. So we've got titanium and D2 with us today. So if you're interested in one of the older TwoSun knives, stick around. The full review's coming right now. Well, let's begin like we usually do with a little bit of a size comparison with the Ontario Rat. And yeah, it doesn't even quite fit on the screen here, so let's go on a bit of an angle here. Actually, I'll just raise this up a bit. Rat 1 has a longer blade, has a longer handle. The blade's not an awful lot longer, there instead of there. The cutting edges, if we line those up, they're about the same. And obviously the handles, if we line up where the finger choil is and back, the Rat is a bigger knife, to be sure. So this knife, I like that it is angular. It's got a very distinct look to it. It's probably got one of these love it or hate it kind of looks to it. What we have on the blade, it's all satin. It's your Western Tanto style blade. Clip point up here, we've got a swedge across the top, and then you can see the full thickness of the blade there going all the way to right there, close to the tip. And then you've got these flat grinds here, and they're saber grinds, and they meet up at the corner pretty much perfectly. There was a TwoSun knife that we reviewed a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, where it didn't meet up quite as well, but this one meets up very well on both sides, and I like that an awful lot. It says D2 right there, night morning design for this blade. Like I said, this is an earlier one, the number 38, TS38. We've got a really good sharpness choil in here. It almost is, you can put your finger up here. If you just use the tip of your finger, you can put it in here, to do some more delicate work. If you wrap your whole finger like that, you might just nick some of your finger because this knife has been sharpened very, very well. As you can see clearly, it's a frame lock. We've only got 2 body screws, the pivot screw and 1 screw at the back. And then there's the screw that holds in the liner lock insert, which also does the over travel protection, which this little raised or dimple section right there, well, it's dimple on this side and big on this side. That's the over travel protection right there. Right there, that's as far as it goes. So that's good. It protects the lock release. Lockup is very good for a brand new knife. We've got ceramic ball bearings, ceramic detent. Pocket clip is right side only, and it's screwed in from the inside. You can just barely see the screw right there. So it screws up. Back spacer back here, it's held in by the body screws here, and then it's got alignment pins. And I'm sure that's titanium as well. You can see a swedge across there, so it's raised. Quite comfortable in hand with all kinds of grips. Like a reverse grip is just great right there. Irregular fist grip is nice. Saber grip is comfortable. pinch grip for doing some detail work, or the forward kind of grip, and then your pinch grip. It just works very, very well. We've got a thumb rest area up here for the meat of your thumb can sit in there, and then the rest of your thumb can be on the jimping up here. The jimping is actually very aggressive. Actually, I shouldn't say very aggressive. It's not milled very deep, these lines. For how shallow those lines are, it is aggressive enough to be super useful. So not so aggressive that it's going to hurt you at all. So let's keep going here. The handle, on the show side here, we've got the bead blasted middle section, that graphic section, and then they've just sanded straight across on the flats, or the flat section there. Being titanium, it's fairly soft. You're going to get these little worm trails quite easily. But on this is just awesome. You would take the knife apart, and since it's straight across back and forth, get some 1000 grit wet dry sandpaper and put it on something flat. Put the sandpaper on there and just gently slide it straight back and forth, and you can refresh those flats very, very well. The bead blast section in the middle, it's not going to show the lines, the wear, anywhere near as easily as these flat sections. One odd thing, it's got the round head screws, and that makes it bulge out by the screws, right? The back screw right there. That is kind of odd. Most of these TwoSun knives have these well-machined flat kind of screws. Here's a picture of one, and that's a different, Night Morning Design TwoSun knife, a very close number model to this. So that looks a little odd right there. I wish they would have done the flat stuff. It would suit the knife better than this round look when everything here is angular. Jimping all the way around the handle. It's like one huge front choil here, but very good grip. Everything fits in there, and then your pinkies, my pinkies on that bigger area there. My hands are between large and extra large on the Western North American men's glove sizes. This knife just fits in my hand. If my hands were extra large, I might find this knife handle a little bit too small. Obviously, it's a flipper knife. There's the flipper there, a little bit of jimping right there, and it opens very well. The detent on it, it's a little bit off. I took it apart and took a look inside, and I'll show you the insides in just a minute. I had my finger on the liner lock right there, on the frame lock. When you're pushing on the frame lock, you can't flip the knife open, so don't hold it like this and expect to be able to open the knife. This is a budget knife. Before we go to the sizes and everything, let's take a look at the insides of the knife. So here's the knife taken apart. You can see there's no skeletonizing done in the handle. It is fairly thin. You do have a little weight reduction. It's made a little thinner there in the middle. That's not an awful lot, but a little bit. And the handle scales really aren't all that heavy. They're not hardened, which is why they put these races in. The main reason why. So you've got a race on either side, and you've got your ball bearings here. These are ceramic ball bearings, so they sit right in there very nicely. And you've got pivot screw. One cool thing about the pivot screws on these ones is you've got this little washer, and that O-ring that acts like a washer on either end. That sits in here, and it helps keep everything in place, and you don't need Loctite that way. You put that in there, and it stops it from spinning around. So clearly you can see that O-ring in there, a little bit of oil left over in there, but it just sits in there ever so nicely. No problem at all with that. That's a kind of good design. And there's the ceramic detent. And there's the lock bar insert. It does a couple things. The lock bar insert means, they can harden that little piece of steel instead of hardening the entire handle. So that behaves very well to interface with the blade for lockup. when the knife is, well, this way actually, when the knife is deployed. And since this is flat right there, and there's a bit of a cutout on this side, that acts as an over travel stop. So the frame lock can't go any further than that. You know, it gets stuck right on there. So that saves extra fatigue on the lock bar as a spring right there. I forgot almost the pocket clip. Looks very, very nice because they screwed it on the inside. So that's another design feature that I like a lot. I actually wish they would have done that same technique over here and put the screw in this way for the lock bar insert so you wouldn't see it either. And now back to the rest of the review. So there you go. That's what it looks like when the knife's taken apart. I like those ceramic ball bearings. Nice smooth action all the way around. So now, before we talk about the price, let's talk about all the dimensions and sizes and all the specs that way for this knife. Made in China, D2 steel, Rockwell hardness of around 60. The sharpness, the factory sharpness of this, it's very, very good. 70 best is what I measured. 200 is considered sharp, smaller numbers better. 70 is awesome. 129 grams, 4.55 ounces, not bad. And now for the dimensions of length, the cutting edge, so tip, and I just measure sort of straight across. Use my vernier calipers. 8.88 centimeters, 3.5 inches. From the tip to the closest spot on the handle, it's a little bit less, 8.45 centimeters, 3.33 inches. The blade thickness right there is 3.91 millimeters. That's 0.1545 inches, and that equals 5/32 of an inch. So that's kind of good. The blade depth, 2.73 centimeters, 1.08 inches. The thickness of the edge behind the grind is 0.57 millimeters, which is 22.5 thousandths of an inch. And now for the grind angle. Yeah, got that right. This side, 15.3 degrees, 20.2 degrees on that side. So that sounds like it's a little ways off, but they're consistent all the way along this edge. It's the same angle, and the tip edge is very close to the same too, and it's consistent all the way across. And now for the handle length is 11.47 centimeters, which is 4.52 inches, so basically 4.5 inches. That's measured from tip point to point here, sort of across like that. The grip area in here, it's right around 9 centimeters, 3.5 inches. The handle thickness, not counting the pocket clip, 1.13 centimeters, 0.446 of an inch, so less than half an inch, and that helps it to be very comfortable. The handle depth, it's biggest right there. I'm not counting the flipper tab. So the handle depth there, not counting the flipper tab on both sides, and the blade depth, they're very much the same. 3 centimeters and 1.2 inches, basically. So 1 1/5 of an inch. Oh no, we don't do fifths when we're measuring stuff like that. And the total length of the knife, oh, I forgot to convert it to inches. I think it's 7.76 or something inches, 19.95 centimeters. Actually, let's just double check that here. Clip it on there. Yes, 7.77 probably, because it's just over 7 3/4. So that is the dimensions for the knife and those kind of specs. How much does this knife cost? Well, White Mountain Knives is where I got mine, I think, or did I buy mine on an eBay auction? I forget where I got mine. I think eBay auction I got mine. But if you want to get a good price and you don't want to wait for an auction, and sometimes auction prices go way too high, and then you just wasted your time waiting for it, happens to me a lot. This knife at White Mountain Knives is $59.99. You save 10% when you use my coupon code CCE, and that makes it $53.99. So $54 US for this knife is a very good price. So make sure your auction doesn't go higher than that. And so that's roughly 72 Canadian, about just under 50 euros, about 42 British pounds. That is if you're buying it without having to pay any extra taxes. And we know in Europe and in the UK, there's a lot of extra taxes. Now, the G10 version is a little bit less if you can find it. I have not found it anywhere in any stores. It's listed at White Mountain Knives, so you can click on the Notify Me button and he will email you when it comes in. And the one with M390, I'll put links down below if I can find it. There is one of those at White Mountain Knives listed as well, but you have to click the Notify Me button for that too. But he does have the prices listed on the website. So there you go. I think this is a good price knife. It's very geometric. It's got that Western tanto, so there's a good crowd of people that really like tantos. This sort of a modern, or I don't know, it's very geographic geometries in here, you know, angles and stuff. If that's what you're looking for, you know, it's got a good design. It's comfortable in hand on almost every kind of grip. The detent is quite nice. Lockup is perfectly solid. The detent is nice in terms of, you know, how much pressure it takes to flip it out, and it flips out well. You know, it does have that tiny little bit of looseness, but that's okay, at least in my opinion. Lockup solid. Alignment when it's closed is very good. Oh, got some wood dust there. Not perfect. It's a little bit to the pocket clip side, but not much at all. Pocket clip is very well done. I'll show you that in a minute. The grinding on the blade, on the bevel, on the swedge, you know, everywhere. I really like the grinding on this. I like the sharpness tool. That's great. Very accurate grind, as you saw, and very well ground. I don't know if I show it. If I didn't show the close-up picture of the grind, take a look at this. So you can see that's ground much more finely than a lot of knives are. So there you go. I like this knife. The cons, well, it's easy to have your finger on the frame lock. And a lot of frame locks are that way for me, but this one is exceedingly that way for me. And that's an individual thing because each of us grips things differently. I do fine with this in my left hand because my thumb, I rest it up there and no problem at all. So I'm great with this with my left hand with not putting my finger on that frame lock. But here, I'm still trying to teach my muscle memory to go up over on the pocket clip, you know, and then there's no problem at all. But I end up very often putting my index finger right there, and then why can't I open the knife? You know, and then suddenly I push hard enough and it comes flying open. So that's not a problem with the knife. It's just part of the way frame locks work. It's me. And so I blame myself for that. The other con is that super tiny one about these round screws. If it had those flat screws, I'd like it a little bit more. Of course, that's being super nitpicky. So now, just before we finish off, let's see what it looks like going in and out of a pocket. Well, that's a very close-up shot, but that's the way it's going to be. It just slides right there to the bottom, and that's where the bottom is. If we turn it sideways, you can see that's the bottom of the pocket clip there, and that's just as far as it slides in. You know, it's not super shiny. It's dull because it's got the bead blast on the pocket clip. It repeats that geometry, the milling in there, and it looks good. Now, you don't have to have it leaning forward like that, but that's how the bottom of the pocket clip is angled. If I push it back here, you know, then it sits looking like that. And again, that's not bad either. And it's easy to grab and pull this knife out. I like it quite a lot. And I'm glad to be able to recommend it to you. There's nothing major holding that back at all. And I already talked about, you know, those little things like, you know, you will get this marred up because it's titanium, but it's very easy to polish that up again. The grip size, you know, and those are the only, you know, real concerns. Tantos aren't that hard to sharpen, especially these flat tantos. You know, you just have to be careful where that point meets. Thick, strong D2 blade. I really like this knife an awful lot. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, guys, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.